This video is going to introduce the first set of problems in our look at JavaScript and data visualization. For this set of problems, what we're going to do is we're going to work with the Titanic data set. And let me actually go get the Titanic data set here. I'm going to go to my, my GitHub repo. So I'm going to go to GitHub, and then I'm going to actually go to, I'll put a link in the description down there. I'm going to go to this data visualization class here, and we'll go to class number 1, assignment number 1. And the goal of this assignment is to comb through the data set and just find relevant values, right? And then later we'll work on displaying them on the screen, but for right now we just want to get the values. So let me show you how to get started. So the first thing you need to do is you need to scroll down here and find this repo with the challenges in it. So I'm going to click on this, and it takes me to the data visualization, working with data repo, and I'm going to click here, and I'll just download this as a zip. You can clone it if you want also, but we just need the files really. So I'll download that as a zip, and it will end up in my downloads folder, and there's the repo there. And the first thing we need to do is we need to get a terminal. So I'm going to open up, terminal. I'm on the Mac, so it's the terminal app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to this directory. So I'll just CD and drag the folder in here, right? And then that'll give me the path. And so now I'm in the data visualization with working with data folder. And what I need to do is install some dependencies. So I'm going to do npm install. And the example files here have some tests built in using Jest. So what you'll do is you'll solve the problems and run the tests, and then the test results will tell you whether you've solved the problems or not. Okay? So that's installed, and now you can run the tests with npm test. And so it runs Jest, and then you can see I have a bunch of tests here that don't pass. There's actually like 20 tests or 22 tests in here, so it's kind of a long list. But if I scroll up to the top here, you can see all the tests are failing except for this one, and this one's actually only passing by accident. Because it's just returning 0, so the minimum fare actually might be 0, right? But anyway, yeah, so your goal now is to write tests for each of these problems, and as you run the test suite, you'll get a little check mark here to show you that the test has passed. Let's open up our code here in I'm going to use VS Code. You can use any code editor for this. And you can see here I've got 2 files, challenges 1 and challenges 2. So you're going to work on challenges 1 right now. And there's a lot of comments in here to kind of describe what's going on. The data here is going to get passed to each of these functions. So the data in the Titanic data set will be passed to the functions here as data. So data right here will be an object with, or actually an array of objects, and every one of those objects will have a series of properties, and you can access the Titanic passenger data from each one of those. So every object in the array, the data array, represents 1 passenger on the Titanic. Okay, let's take a quick look at the data so we kind of get a feel for how it's laid out. If I click on the Titanic passenger JSON file here, there's actually a lot of stuff in here. There's like 900 passengers or something, right? So there's like a lot. I formatted the first passenger, so the other ones just look like this. It's a little hard to read, but if we look at the first passenger, you'll see, this whole thing is an array. It starts with a curly bracket, and then there's a couple pieces of metadata. So there's Titanic data set ID, there's record ID, right? And we can ignore these. And then there's a property called fields. So fields has all of the data about a passenger. So this is our first passenger here is this, right? And then there's a second set of properties. There's this like record stamp ID, record ID, fare, name, passenger class, survive, ticket, siblings, right? So some of these are a little weird, like this P arch, I think, says like how many parents or children, and then P siblings says how many siblings a passenger had, and the fare was how much they paid, right? So you'll notice here that some of the passengers have all of the properties and some of them are missing some of the properties. Or actually, maybe it's hard to tell here, but in a few cases, some of the passengers, we don't know the fare that they paid, right? Or maybe we don't know which class they traveled in, okay? Or we might not know. I think like parents and siblings are always 0 if we don't know anything, but sometimes fare will be missing, right? So that's one of the problems, is actually to filter those missing values out. But anyway, so this should get you started here, right? So take a look at this. The key thing to note here is that the fields is where all the relevant data is stored, okay? So fields is kind of important to us, right? And so every passenger that we get from data is going to, in order to get its fare, you'll have to also get the fields first. So for example, like if I was to get the first passenger here, I could say data bracket passenger 0, and then if I wanted to get the fare, I would say dot fields dot fare, right? Or if I wanted to get the age, it would be fields dot age, or p class, right? Okay, so everything relevant that we're talking about in the problems here always comes off the fields property. Okay, so let's maybe oops, I deleted a curly bracket there. Let's solve one of the problems here. So this first one is kind of a simple one. We need to find the total number of passengers. And since the data is an array of the passengers, and every passenger is an object in this array, we can actually just return the length of the array. So if I say data dot length here, and then I run the test again, and you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Command K to clear the terminal, and then I'll run the test again. And now let's see. Actually, if I look at the bottom here, it says 1 of 2 total. So actually, it says 1 skipped. I think it should say I passed 1. Maybe I'm not reading that correctly. Let's go up here to the top, right? Oh yeah, there we go. So the first test there, get total passengers, is now passing. So it has a check mark, right? So, next we want to sort through and find the number of people who survived. So for survivors, the property in the data is survived, and the value is either no or yes. Okay, so this person survived and this person did not survive. They were a casualty, let's say. So anyway, so that's the second problem, is now how do we count, like if we know how many people total are on the Titanic, how do we find the number of passengers where their survived property is equal to yes? Okay, so I'll leave that for you, and I'll solve some of these in the next video, but you can start here and try as many of these as you can do, and then you can check out the videos if you have questions.